Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 100.
I was going to find 100 glasses, Whitey, because I know my wife has all that crap from 100 Days at School, and I forgot.
Episode 100 of the Whitey and Will Sports
This
Show.
is big time. I feel like Wilt Chamberlain. We should hold up a little 100 sign.
I'm going to get this intro out. This is episode 100 of the Whitey and Will Sports Show. Today is Sunday, January 28th, and we have got a National Trail Conference boys basketball tournament to talk about today. It kind of works out nicely that our 100th episode would be one that I think people will want to hear a little bit. It was a good week of basketball over at Altamont, and so we'll be going over the way it all turned out there at the 88th National Trail Conference boys tournament. There's other stuff that happened around the area, and we will touch on that, including a girls' basketball game that Mike Wilson happened to be on the broadcast team for Friday night. So we'll be sure to hit
7 people
that.
listen to it.
You know what? I'll bet there was
Seven.
I'll bet there was a decent listening audience for that T-Town Effingham girls game. It brings a little bit of intrigue. That one, and we'll get to it, but that game was not as close as I expected it to be.
Yeah, it was. It was. I have insight now. I can actually speak of
Yeah.
without relying solely on you for seeing it.
Do you want to talk? Do you want to
Let's
maybe
start. Let's talk into. I have breaking news.
Okay. Okay, let's go. What's
My
the
peeps tell me there's been some inquiry into the transfer portal of IHSA,
Okay.
even though there's no transfer portal in high school. But rumor has it Ryan Schmidt may transfer to Altamont because he doesn't fricking miss a shot in that gym.
I wondered where this was going.
You were confused, I could tell.
So St. Anthony is the champion of the NTC boys basketball tournament. They were the number one seed. They're the number one team in the state. It's not a surprise that they won it, but they beat Dieterich 70-60 last night in the title game. And Mike, obviously, I was there working it for the radio station, and you were there as a spectator, and lots of people were there as spectators.
As a paid spectator, I thought about trying to flash my Whitey and Will's ID and go in the pass gate. My wife thought, no, we shouldn't. So
It
I
was a
stood
hell
in
of
the
a game.
rain, stood in the rain.
It was a hell of a game last night, Mike.
It was very, very entertaining. It really was. It was most NTC championship games are entertaining
Yes.
because there's usually a lot of emotion, a lot of banter, crowds getting into it,
Yes.
very noisy. It
Yes.
was warm, a little humid in the building last night.
I did not wear a sweatshirt like I did Friday night.
Well, you're a seasoned veteran. Um, they had a hard time keeping the floor dry. And I will say this, coaching in that building, I always ask Doug, gosh dang it,
Doug Hill.
Doug Hill. I had a senior moment there. I always just asked Doug Hill if they had ice in there because that floor was slick. I felt like it was one of the slickest floors I coached on. And now when you throw in all those people and all that heat in the building from all those people,
Uh-huh.
it was getting hard to stand up in that fourth quarter.
I can imagine that also maybe the fact that the weather had kind of warmed up
Sure.
a little bit in recent days probably contributes to that as well.
Yep.
You see that a lot.
And it was raining, so there was humidity in the air.
Yeah.
But those poor towel boys, and then that one female custodian, they were running out of towels to wipe up the floor there in the fourth quarter.
It did get a little interesting there at the end with the footing. And that kind of it sort of the game was still a game, I mean, St. Anthony was ahead, but it kind of every once in a while they would just kind of grind to a halt because they'd have to deal with this, right? Although given how hard the kids were working, maybe they didn't mind so much. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
don't think
where
the
you would be
kids
on.
minded the break. There were two frantic possessions where people were all over the floor, and they were almost back to back. It's like the
Yeah.
first one happened, and they tried to clean the floor, and they really didn't get it because a lot of guys were slipping in those same
Yeah.
areas.
I mean, that one play where the Westendorf kid for Dieterich was he was kind of sliding and dribbling at the same time, and he just
Mhm.
kept sliding down toward his end of the floor, and
I kind of
somehow
thought
managed to.
Curly Neal. I thought got a little Curly Neal move there for a
I
second.
mean, and the thing is like, and Matt Robinson, who is obviously the lead broadcaster on these games, and I'm working with him. He said to me during a break, he's like, I don't know how you describe that play that Westendorf just made, but because like, what was he doing? He's just sort of dragging himself slash sliding on the slippery floor, but keeping the dribble and throwing, and then kind of just batting it ahead to a teammate, and they got a
But
bucket.
isn't that the play that ended up before it was all said and done, or after that? The very next possession was the foul and the technical, was it not?
It was all in there, and it's kind of, without going back and watching it, it's a little blurry. But it was all right there in that same segment of the game, yes, where yeah, there was a play, kind of unfortunately, Dieterich had, unfortunately, not in the terms of like, I've got no dog in the fight, but just in terms of wanting the best possible finish, the most entertaining finish, Dieterich had gotten it back to single digits, and then there was a play where Ryan Schmidt got the ball in the corner. He was being hassled by a couple of different Dieterich players.
Triple
Um,
teamed.
and they called a foul on one of the Dieterich players, and there was a little bit of with the ball, a little bit of this, and then
Yeah, I
after the
think it
whistle, the
was.
ball was taken away from him, and I
Yeah,
don't know if something was said or not. And that's always the thing I can't tell is whether there was some verbal component to the technical. All I know is
right.
that Lucas ripped the ball away from him, and then that was kind of all I saw, and they got him pretty. It came in pretty
Yeah,
quick.
and the thing was, it was a quick whistle, a quick hard whistle. So, in the official's eyes, it was a painful. Yeah, it's not like the kid said something, takes two more steps, and the official reaches for his whistle. No, I mean it was bang.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it was because they whistled and called the foul, and then there was still continued aggression and yanking the ball away. I don't know. I do know that when they talked to Brent Bonoff, he didn't get too animated.
yeah.
So I don't know if that meant he realized I don't care what I do. Obviously, the call's going to stand.
That's the
Officials conferred before they finally administered it, by the way. Um, so, yeah, it was hard to tell.
But the
And
thing
then
is,
Schmidt had, because it was a 3 point game at the time.
oh,
No,
it
it was a
was
5 point game,
I was
five
gonna
point game.
say, I thought he
So
got it
Schmidt
back up
got
to
four
nine or
free
10.
throws, two for the foul, two for the technical. Hell,
Which, by the
he missed
way,
one shot.
he did, but but like he missed two shots all night last night.
Yeah,
We haven't even said the number. 36 points he scored, Ryan Schmidt. He's your MVP of the National Trail Conference tournament. He
Todd
scored
Arnold MVP.
the Todd Arnold MVP, and he was I said this during the broadcast. I was like, obviously I have not been around for all 88 of these, but it has to be up there among the finest championship game performances that conference tournament has ever seen. It just
We've
has.
had friend of the show and NTC historian Kurt Becker has told us at least two other people have been in the 30s in a championship game. I think Leon Gobzinski scored 31, Chris
33.
Bachler 33.
Yeah, both of those. Gobzinski 33 points in
Oh, 33. I'm
1971,
sorry.
and Chris Bachler 33 in 2002.
Now, before I lose my train of thought,
Okay.
I just thought of something. This is how our show's at best. Everybody asks us if we write down our questions and stuff. And I go, no, we're two guys in a bar. We just don't get to eat pizza while we're talking. Well, sometimes we do.
Sometimes
So, um,
one of us has.
Ryan Schmidt's shooting performance. I've been thinking about this, and I was, extremely impressive. He got a couple breaks. Banked in a three. Um, I mean, early they were wide open looks for three. Later they were off the dribble, step back. But his performance, okay, primarily in the middle two quarters. I guess his
Mm,
performance until the early third.
hmm
And then he had to sit down for some foul troubles. And had he not been in foul trouble, he may have scored 50. But I would say from the start of the game till the middle of the third quarter. As good a shooting performance. But it reminded me, and Whitey being someone who was who would have to go back and look. Go to IHSA 1980 and watch the second half of the Effingham Chicago De La Salle game. And the shooting performance that Mitch Arnold did in that half of basketball and the way he played versus, as we're just because when I mentioned the Todd Arnold Award, all of a sudden it's like a light went off in my head. There's a lot of similarities. I may have to watch that today if the football games get boring. I'll pull that archive.
Yeah.
I actually have the game on tape, so I can just, if I can find a VCR in my house, I can watch it.
Ryan was 12 of 13 from the field, 8 of 9 at the free throw line last night.
Missed his last free throw.
Missed the last free throw, and he missed a three-pointer right at the beginning of the third quarter, where he ended up in a seated position by the time the shot hit the rim. He was at least looking for the foul call. I will be honest and say I don't know if it was, I think it was kind of
lay on. That's what that one would have been.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Ryan maybe he was trying to milk a foul there,
but in the first quarter, he scored 12 points.
He scored what, their first 9 points?
Yeah, and he was 8 for 8 at halftime with 19 points and without shooting a free throw. All those
not to be outdone, Dieterich's team was almost matching punch for punch in that first half.
Well, yeah, I mean Landon Keck got them off to a great start. He scored 8 of their 15 points in the first quarter, and then Gephardt hit a couple of threes. He'd been quiet in the first quarter. Caleb Gephardt did some stuff. Tanner Will, who is not a big scorer for them generally, scored 7 first half points. He made some big shots for him. And then, Lucas Westendorf had a good third quarter. And then Gephardt picked it back up in the fourth as they just kept keeping a ball game of it. It was, Dieterich kind of gave you the feeling like they might make a little run there in the second half. And
I was talking to one of my former players, his dad, Matt Custer, and his dad, Greg. I was standing with them and we were talking. And yeah, you keep thinking, okay, at some point, Schmidt's going to wake up. I don't mean wake up, but he's going to miss a shot or two, okay? He's shown us he's a very streaky scorer, can get red hot, but, that was beyond. And I kept waiting on Dieterich to miss a 3 or 2. But you know what? They just kept hitting him. Now, one thing, I'm starting to feel like Robbie Hummel here now. If I'm thinking as Cody Rinker, I'm really looking at that tape and scratching my head because Dietrich got a lot of open looks, Whitey.
Yeah.
A lot of open looks. Going to the basket or, off the little screen and roll and some things. And Dietrich's a good team, don't get me wrong. And they're very streaky, very good shooting team.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also a better shooting team when they have open looks. And there was 2 instances last night, and Dieterich was trying to come back, and there was a loose ball. And really, I felt like the St. Anthony kid was just going to dive and knock it back towards St. Anthony's into the floor. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of just bent over. And Dieterich kid dove in and got it, and then they end up getting a bucket out of it. And that happened twice. And because we were discussing it while we were watching the game, there was 2 times, I felt like they just kind of bent over. And, at some point in your postseason, obviously every possession matters. And I just think defensively they got to tighten some things up. And, just, hey, we got to sell out at times and keep the ball, do that. So and I happened to see this when Indiana played Purdue. Freaking Andre Ware from Indiana bent over to pick up a ball, and Zach Edey comes diving in there, knocks it loose, goes down the other end. Purdue picks it up, gets a layup. Again, one guy hustling, one guy not.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to just say about this Dieterich team is that I mean that's all part of it, and that's how you make a comeback is to make those plays, right?
You
And they did
outwork your
that.
opponent.
They did that to I mean they came back on Altamont in the semifinals. They were down, they came back kind of the same way they did. Those two teams played in the regular season. Altamont won by 2 points. Um, but Dieterich was down 9 in the fourth quarter, came back and even took a lead in that game before losing. And they made a similar comeback in the semifinals. It's just I really like the makeup of their team and
They play hard. I mean, I'll tell you what, they really play hard. They're aggressive. Um, you know, um, they push that envelope a little bit from playing hard and doing things to staying under control. They walk that fine line at times.
yeah. And that's that's the kind of thing you just sort of have to hope doesn't
Well,
go
and
over the
again,
edge during a key game. But I don't think they
and the
didn't do that.
postseason coming up, and I can't emphasize enough, there's no tomorrow. You have that one game where maybe Joey gets out of control, 2 possessions going down the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and the next thing you know, those 2 possessions loom large.
Yeah. It's
I felt like St. Anthony got their lead up to 10 or 11 at one point and took a quick, not very good three.
yes.
And I said something to Greg, and I said, it's almost like, okay, we're up 11. I can take this. And you have to keep doing the things that got you there, especially in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, in the postseason, you can't, and I've done it as a coach. No, 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 no way were you going to miss that shot. You know, uh, in a regional final against Dieterich, I asked Mike Haney on my bench. I was starting to use 4-letter words, and then it went whoosh. I
Yeah.
maybe said what in the, and then it went in. But
I wanted to make sure, like just on the subject of this championship game. I mean, Colin Westendorf, Brock Fearday, obviously, when you got one kid scoring 36 out of 70 points, there's not going to be probably another really big performance. Both of those guys ended up with 9 points. Westendorf, it's hard to ever just put his contributions on a point total. He scores plenty, don't get me wrong, but he's always going to draw the toughest defensive assignment also.
right,
And then, Brock he had a bad shooting night and
struggled in the first half shooting the ball. He didn't
yeah,
score in the first half, did he?
no, and it's not like the looks were not there. He was open, he was getting looks. He just wasn't hitting them. And like I said to Matt during the broadcast, the only reason I keep talking about it is because it's so strange to see Brock Fearday miss so many open jumpers.
Wasn't it the first game of the tournament? He just shot great in the first half.
Oh yeah, against Cowden Heritage
I think I
City.
listened to you guys, or I was watching it, one or the
Yeah,
other.
yeah, against CHBC he couldn't
I was
miss.
watching it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was watching it.
And he still ended up with 9, I mean, he's going to get his points and he had 6 rebounds.
He
But
got some big buckets in that fourth quarter for it.
oh yeah. Um, but I want to talk about Brady Hatton for just a second.
I'm glad because I wanted to go there too. He was impressive last night.
Yeah, and he comes off the bench for them and listen, he could start if they wanted to start him. It's one of those deals where they do things a certain way. They've got a rotation they like, and they're gonna
Right.
keep doing it, and it's working. They're the best team in the state, so they're gonna keep doing it. But Hatton, he scored. He had 8 points, 7 rebounds last night, and the points. It's not just stickbacks either, because sometimes he'll have a game where he gets you 6 or 8 points, and it's just offensive rebounds and stickbacks, which is that's important too. But he can create his own look a little bit. He
Yeah,
can get it out of the offense, and most importantly, like he affects so many shots defensively. Even if he doesn't get a hand on them, there were a couple of times where guys had to shoot over him, and it mattered, right? It mattered
sure.
because he's 6'4" and he's long, and he just he he takes so much away going toward the basket. So he's a really nice piece, a really nice piece, and he's never going to put up huge numbers, but I think a pretty key cog.
I agree. I agree. He was quality minutes, and he does a lot of good things. His length causes problems. He gets his hands on a lot of balls.
I'm getting a text from somebody who might be joining us in a minute here. Uh,
You're telling me his nap's over?
uh, but it was. I just thought that Dieterich really they impressed me. St. Anthony's obviously very good, but
Yeah, no, and under this, I thought they played a pretty good ball game last night. I really did. They scored 70 points. They had to juggle some kids' foul issues. Hatton, Rue Hall gave him really good minutes off the bench. Brent Kidd, I think they only went 8 deep, didn't they?
yeah, they
Cody shortened his rotations, which
and
you're going to see. That's part of it.
and Henry Brent only played a little bit, and I think if they
Right.
don't have the foul trouble they have,
Right.
they probably would have stuck with seven. Ruhal and
But I
Hatton.
think you'll see Henry Brent getting postseason minutes simply because he guards. I
Mhm.
mean, he gets after it.
Well, and that's what Nick Ruhal brings to the table too. The kid can hit a
Right. No, I
shot,
agree.
but he's a pretty good on ball defender. He did get caught. He got caught kind of hanging on a couple of times. I mean, I think St. Anthony as a team, they'll take some liberties, if they can
Well,
if
you
they can
take
get them.
liberties until you're told you can't take liberties anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's just the game, right? Like you do what
Yeah.
you do what you can. So
Well, I agree.
yeah, but the Schmidt obviously the thing about Ryan Schmidt, as far as his MVP performance for the week, I mean, it doesn't just come down to scoring 36 points in the championship game either, because um,
In a nice semifinal game.
yeah, in the semifinals, which were low scoring and extremely physical, I mean, extremely physical to the point of being uh distasteful to watch, if I could, like, being at times unenjoyable, I think.
I was watching it.
But that was St. Anthony won that one by what you would term a comfortable margin, if you just looked at the final score. But it was a tight game until Ryan Schmidt came out and just went on a little blitz.
What, like a 7, 8, 9 run?
He scored 8 straight points at the beginning of the fourth quarter that took a 5 point game, into double digits in a hurry. So
Now, and I agree with you, the game was physical, but I will say this, it wasn't physical one way or being called one way. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Both teams,
no,
both teams were both teams were pushing the envelope, and so it was a case where there was no, all the calls went against. No,
no,
that wasn't the case at all.
no, and I felt like there were a couple of games, the third place game being another one that, like, you could, if you don't get it under control in the first quarter, then that's just how it's going to be, and at a certain point,
But again, as
there's no
officials,
turning back.
if you call everything, you got several kids on the bench in the fourth quarter in foul trouble. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and I don't say you pick and choose, but kids get used to playing a certain style, and sometimes they don't adapt very
I'm going to pause this for just 1 second, and we're going to
well.
see about something, and then we will pick this conversation back up here.
Okay.
All right, we took that little break because Matt Robinson is calling into the show. We wanted to make sure we wanted to get Matt in on the conversation, because obviously he was at all 14 of the NTC tournament games along with myself, leading the broadcasts. And Matt, we've kind of already discussed the championship game a little bit, and it doesn't matter if you repeat anything that we've already said. I just kind of want I just kind of want you to kind of give us your overarching thoughts about that game. I mean, obviously Ryan Schmidt sticks out in that game, but just overall, after having a little time to think about it, what was the feeling walking away from there?
It was as competitive of a game as I thought it was going to be. You knew Dieterich and St. Anthony were both going to come in there, both ready to do whatever they could to win that game. And, obviously, Ryan Schmidt's performance was just incredible. I mean, only missing one shot from the field and one free throw, and that free throw was late I don't want to say it didn't matter, but the game was pretty much decided. That was fun to watch in a way that you just don't see happen. And it wasn't like the shots were all just easy, uncontested stuff. He was making moves, fading away, step back threes. I had somebody ask me after the game, was there something else Dieterich should have done defensively against him? And I mean, maybe, but I don't know what. I don't know who you put on him. If you want to switch that, because the thing is you're still in the game.
Yeah.
So I just think it was an incredible performance. But I was curious to see Landon Keck and how he would perform, because the tournament's new to him in a way. And, he didn't grow up with it, transferring into Dieterich this year. And so he responded well. He played a good game. And at the beginning of the game,
off to a pretty good start.
Yeah. I mean, he had 8 of his 15 points right there in the first, or 12 points right there in the first quarter, and he had over half their points to start the game in that first quarter too. So, I thought both teams had a game plan, and both teams followed it pretty well. And it just turned out that St. Anthony, come away with a 10-point win. But I think what it says is, I think if they meet again, you're going to see another great game.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, if Ryan Schmidt's not that hot, then maybe Dieterich wins that game. But if Brock Fearday is more to his normalcy as far as making shots and that sort of stuff, that's St. Anthony's counter argument. And then Dieterich, they had a very balanced attack, and I thought they used their entire team well. You had their 5 starters scoring between 7 and 15 points. I think Coach Bonoff would have took that anytime. So great game, great atmosphere. Altamont does a great job. It's always a lot of fun.
I think the defensive strategy that Dieterich might have thought about employing would involve throwing a lasso around Ryan Schmidt, just hog time in midcourt and see how long you can get away with that.
The only thing I thought on is the defensive strategy might have been an offensive one. Whoever he's guarding, try to A, make him work, and B, shot fake, get him into foul trouble, do something like that. Even if it costs you a foul or a turnover, in that stretch. Because he was in a little foul trouble on his own. But, things easier said than done. And that's the other thing. He didn't play the whole game because he was sitting with fouls.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, he probably sat 6 minutes at least, Matt.
Oh, I would think so. Yeah. And I mean, and Coach Rinker had the luxury to do that because they had the lead.
Right.
So he could be patient with bringing him back in. So, it was just one of those nights where a kid was incredibly hot and in that zone, and, you tip your hat to him, and I hope it's something that, I know it's something he'll never forget.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen a lot of championship games at the NTC at this point, Matt, and I don't know. to me, and it's hard to come up with an individual performance in that game that rivals that one. But I haven't been around quite as many of them, but to me, it certainly stood out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of any championship game that would have compared to that as far as individual performance. I just, there's nothing that I've personally seen that pops into my head, especially in a game where, it was a tight game.
Yeah.
And, maybe there was a time where someone, blew out somebody, so to speak, and a kid went crazy, but I just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I know I can remember Curtis Schwarm in '93 had a tremendous tournament run, and when Brownstown won it, but I don't know what I can't remember what any sort of individual game, especially in a championship game, would have been.
Yeah, and that was a whole tournament by Curtis. It wasn't just one game. He just dominated the whole tournament.
Yeah, that's how I recall it. And they were a 7 seed and wound up winning the tournament, but that seeding was a little off because he and another kid missed some time early in the season. So, but yeah, that's, I mean, just maybe something like that, but
yeah, and
I don't know.
Kurt Becker let us know, that he says it's not a single game record. Of course, there's been bigger games, but like you said, sometimes you'll have those lopsided early round games where somebody's going to be able to go off. And plus, just quite honestly, the scoring environment now is not what the scoring environment was
right.
Once upon a time. And so but again, just in terms of championship games, pretty darn impressive. And
sure,
it was fun to watch unless you were wearing maroon in the gym last night.
Yeah, and it's just the way it goes. The Dieterich fans, man, they showed up. They were there in full force, and St. Anthony obviously brought the big crowd as well. So, that I always enjoy walking on the floor while the crowd's kind of coming in, and kind of looking up around the horseshoe just to kind of see who's there. So it's a fun thing when that big gym starts filling up, no matter what teams are in it.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, obviously we're not going to take the time to like break down all of these games, but just in terms of the tournament in general, I think is kind of where I want to go with this. It was a good tournament this year. After you got through the quarterfinal round where kind of the haves and have-nots this season were sort of separated out onto their sides of the bracket. From Thursday on, there really wasn't a bad game in there. A couple of them the gaps got wide toward the end, but they were all competitive games for 3/4 at least. It was just as good a competition as I think there's been in a little while, game to game.
Yeah, I mean, from the quarterfinals on, I'd agree with that. I mean, once you got past that, it just sometimes that's the way the tournament works. There's a natural split, and it seemed to be that way this year. And I mean, that's nothing to say that one of those consolation bracket teams can't come up and get wins, or anything like that. But it's the way it worked this year. I mean, and when you think about it, you got into the semifinals there on that side of the bracket. I mean, you had, Dieterich beat Altamont by 4. You had St. Elmo Brownstown. They lost to St. Anthony 51-32, but that was a 5-point game going into the fourth quarter. And it had the feel that St. Elmo Brownstown could still win this game. It wasn't like, well, it's 5, but they're not in, sometimes 5 points is different than in one game to another, So, but, St. Anthony put a big run together there at the beginning of the fourth quarter in that semifinal, and that was the difference. And, it ended up being a 19-point ball game, but like say, it was closer. And you kind of saw that throughout the consolation bracket games and the semifinals there as well.
Yeah. Some storylines just that came out of this tournament for me. North Clay won the consolation championship. And again, they won that one by 17, but it was a pretty tight game for quite a ways.
Mm-hmm.
North Clay's team, North Clay was really good last year, and North Clay is going to be really good again for the next couple of years. I think there is a lot to like about that team. And we talked about this on the air, like their record was not fantastic coming in, and I think people could have looked at that and said, why are they the 5 seed? And they really proved it this week.
Yeah, I think when they had the seeding meeting there at the early part of January, they had just lost to Altamont at hosting Altamont, and they had and then after that they'd suffered a couple of more losses, in the conference, and so their conference record didn't look as good. Their overall record didn't look as good, but their strength of schedule, what they had played at the beginning of the season, was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in a lot of games, but they just didn't finish a lot of those games. And so, and I think what you're talking about is they're good and they're going to be good. Well, they're going to lose Jesse Widener and Ethan Kinsler, and those are nice high school players, but they have got a trio of sophomores with Cody Zimdars and Carter Walden that have been playing since last year significant minutes. And I really like Mason Byers coming off the bench for them. So I think, they've got those sophomores to build with, and Gavin Hosselton, who is a great hardworking player, does a lot of the dirty work, so to speak, defensive end especially. Yeah. He'll be back as a senior. So yeah, I like what I see out of them now, and then I like what I see the potential to be. And I think their coaching staff will do a good job to get them where they need to be.
Well, and the Griffey kid, he's a freshman this year, did a little for them by necessity at the beginning of the season. I don't think that's probably what they necessarily wanted for him, but kind of had to do it. And I don't know what kind of a scorer he will turn into, but he's an athletic kid too. And I think he has the makings of one of those guards that will defend a really good player every night, and maybe pick up sort of where Hosselton leaves you when he graduates.
Yeah, and there's some other names down there in that, sophomore class that we're familiar with from baseball and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't necessarily translate, but sometimes athletes are athletes, and we know that they have a winning mindset now, especially with their baseball program and basketball programs building again. So, that's something to always is handy to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, that's something I mentioned to Coach Zink, Josh, whenever I was interviewing him after the game yesterday, was that he mentioned that he feels like they're kind of ahead of schedule as far as developing those young players because they have responded so well. And that's just sort of, their baseball team's the same way. Like, you would have excused them this fall from kind of still not being very good. And yet they just have a good culture in that school for their athletics, and lots of buy-in, lots of participation. So it'll be fun to keep an eye on it. And and we hope they're a good team. We hope, everybody in the conference is a good team. Yeah. I've enjoyed watching Cowden Herrick Beecher City play this year. Absolutely.
They've worked extremely hard. They've got a phenomenal athlete in Wojcik. But it's not just him. There's other kids that are doing good things. Windsor Stew Straws is showing signs with a mix of seniors and underclassmen. And we talked about it during doing that Windsor Stew Straws game. We're going to have to say goodbye to one of these teams, and we weren't ready to, as far as the tournament was concerned, because we were looking forward to doing more Windsor Stew Straws and doing more Neoga games, because Neoga I understand where they're at conference-wise and record-wise, but, they were fun to watch, and it's all because they work hard and they're trying. If you
Well,
see teams that are giving up on it, then that's when it's frustrating or not fun to announce the games or watch the games.
yeah, I mean, listen, you can call me a homer if you want, but I like Andrew Snow an awful lot. He's an excellent coach, an excellent leader of high school athletes, and I'd put him up against anyone else as far as what he does with his team. Right? He does it. He does a nice job, and maybe the horses haven't been there recently, but I'd love to see what he does when he has them. I put it that way.
Well, and I've said that too. I really like Coach Snow. As a coach, I like him personally. I don't know him. I mean, know him well enough to walk up and say hi and chat for a little bit, but I don't want to make it sound like we're best friends or anything. But I think I've got a lot of respect for him. He at one time was in the Altamont school district where my kids go to school, and I understand that he needed to do what was best for him, and he had an opportunity to coach at Neoga at the varsity level. But I was disappointed that he got out of Altamont's system because I thought he was going to do good things there, at the junior high level where he was coaching. And, who knows how life goes, in a few years, so to speak, he could have, where that would have emerged. But at the end of the day, I think he does a great job. And, we've talked about all these teams, but I still think Brownstown or St. Elmo Brownstown, boy, if you're not ready for them, they're going to get you. That's a good team this year. There's 5 or 6 teams that if I'm in the postseason, I don't want to see them sitting across from me in that conference, or coming out of that conference if they're in my regional.
Yeah, just looking at that subsectional that they're in, I mean, they're going to be one of the top 2 seeds in a regional somewhere. And you know, they're they've got a lot of. I mean, they're veteran team, and you can never
Mm-hmm.
count. That's a big thing when it comes down to crunch time in a big situation, and they're not going to shrink away from the important shot or the big moment in the game, and that's you can't really quantify it. You just kind of know it when you see it, and I see it in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. They're not scared. They are not scared. They will. And I know things didn't work out for them in the, in the semifinals against St. Anthony. And I know they lost to Altamont by 10 in a third place game that was a little different, just had a different feel to it. And I can't put my finger on it, but it just, and kudos to Altamont. They had kids step up and get the job done. I mean, don't take anything away from that team, but that's what I mean. There's Altamont's a team you don't want to run into. That's for sure. And even though they suffered an injury to Elam, hopefully he can come back, but they're going to find out, more this week and see where that's at too. Because he's a big part of their team, but they do have other kids, obviously, that, can play the game.
Sure. I think, Matt, that if I had to pick one player in this conference and just watch him, watch his games, keep an eye on him the entire time he's in there, I think Caden Miller he might be the guy. He just might. He's an animal out there. He's just I mean, the way he defends, the way he rebounds, and the scoring is not a thing of beauty, but it's by virtue of what a physical specimen he is out there, just kind of a man among boys type of thing.
Well, in my position, I try real hard not to let my bias show. This is a kid that I just root for so hard. I had the opportunity to help coach at the junior high level in Altamont, and that's when he was coming through. he'll do anything you ask him to do. He's a very kind, nice kid, very polite, very, and he just wants to do the best he can for his team. And, he was a teammate of my son's, all along. And he's just one of those kids that you can't help but root for, especially if you know him. And, so yeah, he, and I know he was frustrated with the third game and how that went for him personally, but he was so excited that they got that win against St. Elmo Brownstown. Still, some kids would have hung their head after, just the way that game went for him. But hey, my team won. That's all that mattered to him in the end,
Couple more things here. I wanted to make sure, we haven't talked much about South Central. They got off to a tough start in this tournament with that game that just got sideways on them. But even there, I like the way that Coach Doring's team plays for him. By the way, shout out to Coach Doring. He came up and he let me know that he must watch occasionally. He said instructed me to keep carrying Wilson on the show, and I said I'll do my best.
Trust me, that's his whole family will tell you that, not just him.
But
I'm not sure you have to watch the show to really understand that much either. But as long as
Wow.
But that's a team that, like, you just look at you look at the bodies and sometimes, like, you're just kind of doing. You're making the most of what their God-given abilities are, and South Central does, right? I like a lot of their guys. The freshman Nielsen, he's got some. He's going to get bigger and stronger because, again, he's like 14 or 15 years old. So there's some things that he will get better at, but the kid's not afraid to pull the trigger. That's for sure. You really saw his confidence, I think, even in that tournament, pick up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he doesn't score 8 points right away in that fourth quarter, they don't come away with that. And so,
yeah,
and that was a big win for South Central in that 7th and 8th place game. And if you don't think that game was important to both Cowden Herrick, Beecher City, and South Central, you are way off. Because you could see it. You could see it in the coaches and how they were coaching it. You could see it in the kids and how they were responding to it. They came out of that tournament with a win, South Central did. And I know, like you said, the first game was just, it just didn't work, and Dieterich obviously had a lot to do with that. But, it just, even when they got a chance, it just somehow didn't seem to work for them. And then, you come back and lose another fairly tough game, in there to Windsor Stew Straws. So that Saturday game meant a lot to them. And I was happy for Coach Doring. I was happy, for those kids that they got a win. Not that I would have been happy that CHBC would have picked up another win in the tournament too. But, you make a good point where I think he's at this point in time, the season's been a little tricky for him, but they are making the most of what they have, and they are, they're still going to compete hard for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you mentioned that game meaning so much to CHBC. They don't get to play on Saturday very often. It just hasn't worked out that way. In fact, as long as Coach Thompson has been there, they haven't. And so he mentioned to me after they beat Neoga in the play-in game, I said something about, well, it's always just nice. It's always big to get a win in this tournament, isn't it? And he said, well, this is the first time it's happened. So yeah, it's pretty big. And I felt bad for asking the question the way I did afterwards, but it led to a really good point. It does matter a lot to them just to be playing in a Saturday game and not listening to it or watching it.
Yeah. And, and look, the tournament's changed its format. That's a game that got added a couple of years ago. And I say a couple, which probably means it was 6 or 8 at least now, but how my mind works. But, and some people are like, well, why do they even bother? Well, giving kids the opportunity to play, you never know what's going to trigger or spark somebody in some team. And maybe this is something that both of them can build on, you know?
Yep. Okay, so let's do this. I'm just going to read down the all tournament team real quick, and some of these kids we've already talked about, but I'll do that, and then maybe that'll lead to a little bit more conversation, and then we can, I don't know, we can probably move along unless there's anything, Mike, that you think I have not touched on. But I think it's been a
No, I mean, I think our goal is to talk a lot about the tournament, and he has.
yeah. So here it is. Clayton Wojcik from Cowdenherrick Beecher City. He had 4 really nice games for them since they played in the play-in. He got in there. Jackson Gurgle from Windsor Stew Straws. Cody Zimdars from North Clay. Again, that's a sophomore there. And another sophomore,
Mm-hmm.
Cade Melville from Altamont, got in there. We didn't even really mention this, but in that third place game, 22 points and a bucket of rebounds. And really,
we had him with 9.
Yeah.
I would like to go through the tape and find him another one. That would be pretty cool. I don't know if it's there or not.
Tag on him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you mentioned Caden Miller, with his situation where he didn't get to finish that game. Well, Melville kind of picked up the slack there. He really did. It was kind of a coming out party for him a little bit too. I think he's a good athlete, but obviously the best high school game he's played in a pretty big moment. Cade Schaub from St. Elmo Brownstown, Landon Keck from Dieterich, Caleb Gephardt from Dieterich, Colin Westendorf from St. Anthony, Brock Fearday from St. Anthony, Caden Miller from Altamont, Lucas Westendorf from Dieterich, and then, of course, the MVP, Ryan Schmidt, who we've talked a lot about already, the Todd Arnold MVP,
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Schmidt. It's there were some really outstanding performances amongst these kids in here. But there's always going to be, a few peripheral things like, should this guy or this guy have made it? But I felt like for the most part, pretty comfortable picks. St. Elmo Brownstown, as good a team as they are, they never, like, Atwood had a really nice game for them in the opening game, and then he kind of got taken away. They just never had anybody. They didn't have anybody that just really put up big numbers throughout the tournament. But Schaub was probably the most steady, I guess, especially if you look at like some of the other stuff besides scoring. So that was one where you wanted to get a St. Elmo kid on there, but it was interesting how that one went with the selection committee, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, some years I'm a part of the committee, some years I'm not, and I appreciate it when they ask me to be involved. But the last few years I've laid out because of like I said, I coached a lot of these kids from Altamont in particular. I just don't want anybody to think that they got it because I was in there, or they maybe didn't because I didn't want to show favoritism. So,
right. And,
so
and I appreciate that, Matt. I mean, and it becomes a lose-lose proposition because you'll have the armchair people. Oh yeah, well that person's on because Matt Robinson coached them in 8th grade or this or that, and it has nothing to do with it. There's no bias because when you can announce your own son playing in games and people don't know it's your son, they know you're pretty well down the middle when you do that. So yeah, but I understand completely why you wouldn't want to. But yeah, and I thought you guys did a pretty good job from the games like I said, I saw on YouTube or listened to.
Well, that committee, it's not easy, to be a part of it. And, kind of getting to the St. Elmo Brownstown situation. Sometimes it's hard to get an all-tournament team member or 2 from a team like that because they are such a balanced team.
Mm-hmm.
And every, like you say, this kid or that kid had a good game or where they actually, I guess would say stood out, but it wasn't all week. And the flip side of that So that's one point, that kind of stems from that situation. And then the other thing, you mentioned Adam Atwood. Man, I don't care. I would take that kid on my team anytime, any place. And part of the reason he doesn't make the team is because all-tournament team member Colin Westendorf guarded him in that semifinal and, kept him in check. And I think that, Colin does a lot of great things on the court for St. Anthony. That one included is the defensive end that's hard to quantify a lot of times.
Yeah.
And then another kid that I think, that could use some mention in that same breath is Aiden McManaway.
Mm-hmm.
He was guarding him in that third place game, and Atwood's 1,000-point scorer, and McManaway, outscored him in that game, and McManaway only had like 8 points, but his defense was a big part of why Atwood was limited offensively. Now also Atwood's not going to force stuff. He sets up his teammates and puts them in good position too. So when the defense is focusing on them so much, that creates a situation sometimes where things like that happen. But this list that's on there, I don't know how people argue with who made that team. Like I said, I think Aiden McManaway is a player that's not on the team that kind of stood out to me in a couple of games this week. And then another player that we haven't mentioned is Brock Niemerg, part of that sophomore,
Yes.
Looking at the future. I was impressed with what I saw from him. He's coming off an injury too. And you talk about a big week to come off of an injury as a sophomore and be a big part of some big games. I like what I seen out of him.
And one more thing, he only played 2 games, so you can't put him. I don't have a problem with it, but boy, a good story out of that tournament was James Bullock, who was a senior from.
Yes.
He came into that tournament averaging less than 4 points a game. He scored 17 and 18 in those 2 games, and they're not in either one of those games without what he did. So just gotta at least mention the kid. I mean, it's 2
Absolutely.
games, and you're a victim of circumstance there. If he gets one more game and gets a chance to have another one of those, he probably finds his way onto the list. But it was a cool thing to see. So I just wanted to make sure
Hey, Whitey, I do have a question. How many of those all-tournament kids will be back next year? At least 6.
Let's see. Wojcik's a senior.
Gergel's a junior.
Gergel's a junior. Yeah, Zimdar's a
Gergel,
sophomore.
Schmidt, Faraday, all back. Zimdars, that's 4.
Landon Keck is still a junior.
That's 5.
Westendorf is still a junior. Lucas
6. Sophomore from, didn't Altamont have a sophomore?
Yeah, Cade Melville.
Yeah, Melville.
7.
Yeah, quite a few. So yeah, it's
just impossible to think of Lucas Westendorf as a junior and Brock Fearday as a junior.
Yeah, they've been around forever, but yet there they are. So.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt, I can offer you one of 2 choices, and we're not offended by either one that you make here. But we're going to talk about other stuff besides the NTC, I think pretty briefly, but you're free to hang on and throw your 2 cents in on that, or you're free to go about with your afternoon. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I tell you what, you guys waited for me, kind of, sort of, in a weird way with my stuff I had going on technically and getting here late. I apologize for that, but I will step aside. I think everybody's heard plenty from me this week. So I will let you guys take it. I always appreciate being asked to be on the show, and especially when it's something that I'm as passionate about as the NTC tournament and in general high school sports. So
yeah, it was a good week, Matt. It really was. It was a good week at Altamont, I thought.
Matt, in our archives we keep, we may only count this as a half guest appearance.
Oh no.
Well, I mean, however it works is how it works. I'm a,
Well,
I'm a, I can handle it. However it comes down.
well, Matt,
And I do want to echo one thing you mentioned. I think Dieterich and St. Anthony play again would be a heck of a ball game. That's going to be in a St. Anthony sectional if it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stakes are
Honestly,
high.
I haven't really even looked at any of the postseason stuff yet. I get through the NTC tournament, and sometime this week I'll start looking at the girls' side of things and the boys' side of things as far as the season is concerned. But it's really just kind of one thing at a time
yeah,
for me. And this is a big
girls
one
seeds
thing this NTC week.
Girls seeds come out this Thursday. Boys seeds the next Thursday, and
Mm-hmm.
pairings are Friday, and it's amazing. Dustin and I couldn't wait for basketball, and now you can see.
yeah. Now it's just about over.
Yep, and we talked about great boys basketball this week. That's been the emphasis, but man, our girls teams are really good in this area too.
Hey, Matt, I will say one thing: get a little rest because you do have a little game Friday night.
Yep. I'll try to be in good shape by the time that rolls around.
This is usually the time of the season when Larry Wilson will get that mysterious cough going about NTC week.
Yeah.
Well, Dustin can attest that I've had that thing for about 3 months already.
No, I believe it.
We get through it. All right, Matt. Enjoy Monday night off, and then we'll reconvene at Effingham High School for a little bit of girls basketball.
Hey, and Matt, you did a super job this week. Just want to give you that shout out.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very kind. And we'll catch you on Tuesday there, Dustin. And by the way, first time he's been at the NTC for all 14 games as a part of our broadcast crew. And
I know.
I think Dustin did a fine job as well.
Well, it was about
it goes to his head. We don't want to give him too much credit.
All right. Matt, take it easy.
Yep. You guys have a great day. Thanks again.
See you, Matt. Thank you.
Talk to you. All right, cool. That was Matt Robinson. Nice enough to join us for a while. He is obviously the sports director with the radio stations now 97.9 and 102.3, and doing a great job with it. It was fun to work with him all week. Hey, speaking of the NTC, one last thing. We love it when people come up to us and find us and let us know that they've been following the show, and you had more of an opportunity to talk to the guy than I did, but Brady Roberts, tell me that Twitter account again. It's
just a second. Now that you say it, now I got to open up Twitter here. Just a second. Hardwood Preps, Illinois.
Yeah.
I see he has a lot of scores on there. Is really where I've followed him on Twitter, because anyone like that I follow primarily for my tournament. Yeah, he came up to me last night, said he listens to our show, so that's at least the 7th person I know that does.
And he handed you this?
Yes, Wabonza Valley program. They're one of the 3 unbeaten teams still in the state, I think.
Yeah, this is a program.
Mount Zion's gone, Centralia's gone. It may be just them and Byron. There may only be 2 teams still unbeaten.
Speaking of Centralia, and we don't need to belabor the point too much, but T-Town's boys had to play them.
Ended up, I guess, last maybe 3 or 4 minutes of the game, it got to a running clock. That's and number one, Centralia is really, really good.
Yes.
And that's the type of team that I know that will give T-Town fits, primarily because they have enough quick athletes who can say, Mr. Gaddis, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting points because we can stay between you and the bucket. Plus, Centralia probably had a little red ass after last year because they got beat at J.H. Griffin last year, and they didn't like that very well. So I'm sure they were plenty motivated for that game. Haven't talked to anybody from T-Town who was there. But the score I want to say it was about a 10-point game at the half or something.
Yeah,
it was fairly close.
Yeah, but T-Town hadn't scored very much.
Right. No, but neither is Centralia.
Below 20. Yeah. It was a tough week for T-Town just because listen, that's that's a hell of a schedule to play in a week. Okay. They had Mount Zion on Tuesday night, went up there, got beat by 16 points.
Yeah. Two of the best teams in 3A.
Yeah. And then in the middle there on a Friday night, you got Mater Dei come in. Well, they beat Mater Dei by 13, 62-49. But listen, even in a down year, Mater Dei is going to be a tough team to play against just because they're still going to be athletic. They're still going to be
Yeah.
physical. And, listen, there are a lot of teams who would not win a game in that stretch, and the shoes
Sure.
got
And again, that's
And
T-Town
then,
preparing for postseason.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Now, I
then
will
listen,
say this. A few years ago, Mount Zion wouldn't play T-Town. They
yeah,
dropped them off the schedule because T-Town was handing them humble pie 2 or 3 times in a row, and they got tired of it. Well, now they got good kids come back, and they want to be back on the schedule. So,
and in
yeah,
T-Town, it doesn't get any easier for them. I mean, they got to go to Newton on Tuesday. That'll be a good challenge.
that will be a great atmosphere.
And then they'll go to the Enlow Center on Friday night. You alluded to it with Matt, but that'll be kind of a big one. that'll
Well,
that'll be
and it will be, and it's interesting. And I'll give you like my thoughts off camera on what will transpire, but it's gonna be biggest thing that happens in this game, Whitey, is which group of players doesn't need a sub 2.5 minutes into the game because they're so amped up, they're so geeked up, they're so ready to go. It's amazing how many kids want to get a quick minute breath like 3 minutes into the game because they expend so much energy. Your heart's pounding walking in the locker room to get dressed. Okay. And it's managing that and staying on an even keel and not wasting a lot of energy early. Because I've seen it happen. I've seen it from both benches. Okay. It's not a one school does that. No, it happens both places. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. So yeah, I mean,
and
it's
listen,
going to be a traditional T-Town St. Anthony game.
yeah, it's going to be a tough one. And then listen, T-Town's got Robinson come in on Saturday, and I know Robinson's having a down year, but I don't think they're an easy team. I don't think they're an
No,
easy
they've
team
won
to
a few
play.
games in a row,
Yeah.
or I think, and they've got some athletes on the team, so they're trying to get geared up for postseason. So they're going to be ready to go. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, they have won a couple games in a row. They beat Marshall, and then they beat Mount Carmel and in the consolation side at the Little Illini tournament. So there you go. Listen, man, we've been going a while. I don't want to stretch this out too much. I won't. The T-Town girls, they had an interesting week in that they played Altamont on Tuesday night, and this kind of, as far as the NTC girls go, I mean, Altamont's obviously they're one of the top two teams in that conference. I expected that game to be a little closer than it was, and T-Town just thumped them 65-36. Don't know exactly. Oh, I do kind of have some insight onto that. My understanding is that T-Town essentially doubled Nelson the entire time and just sort
Yeah,
of.
I saw some of that somewhere. I saw it on YouTube or something. And there was maybe not pure double teaming, but they were always a player able to come out and help. And the big thing was they were not letting her take the ball to the hole.
Yeah.
So they weren't, in essence, double teaming and face guarding. But when she got the ball, help came to take away penetration.
Yeah, I mean, listen, South Central tried to do that when they played, and obviously South Central is just not the team that T-Town is. I don't mean that as a slight to South Central as much as
Right.
it's just sort of a statement about what T-Town is year in and year out. And in the half court, they were able to kind of make it work for a while, but she does so many other things, defensively, her defense leads to offense, and she still put a bunch of points on the board. But I thought it was an interesting strategy, and I wondered, how a little bit deeper team would maybe be able to employ such a thing. And so that was interesting to see that it worked out pretty well. And you know, T-Town, I mean, you look at their schedule, their girls,
They end up beating them by 20.
oh, uh, more 65-36. So almost
29.
yeah.
So,
Uh,
and I kind of gathered it really wasn't as close as the score indicated.
and then of course they, yesterday the T-Town girls played top team in the state, Breeze Central, and played them within 11. And knowing nothing else, I mean, that seems fine. I mean, that's a good challenge. But then they played Effingham on Friday night. And here's where we get to the Mike Wilson portion of the show, because you and Greg were there doing that game. And
Yeah.
and listen, going into it, and this is taking nothing away from Effingham. Effingham's a really good team, but I expected this one to be closer, and Effingham beat them by 19. So tell me a little bit about it, Mike. That's kind of where we'll go here.
Well, and after Greg interviewed Lori after the game, I talked to Lori for a little bit until Steve Raymond was making obscene gestures from the floor to me to stop talking to Lori so she could come down and talk to him. And then I talked to Jeff Schaefer as well. And I shared with both of them. And again, this is from the coaching side of me. And I'll phrase it in two ways. One, kind of a political correct way, and then the non-political correct. Okay. Effingham kind of T-Town.
Okay.
Okay. And what I mean there is T-Town is traditionally the aggressor. They come out and get after you early. And if you're not physically and mentally prepared for that, you get off your game. And the reason I say that, T-Town had 13 turnovers in the first half. At one point in the late second quarter, Whitey, T-Town had 13 turnovers and 12 points. Now, the non-political correct way, Effingham came out and punched them in the mouth, and T-Town didn't punch back. And the thing I see with Lori's girls that game, a lot of sophomores, okay?
Yeah.
A lot of sophomores that aren't physically imposing. How's that?
Sure.
And when they would go to the hole, throw up, and quoting Coach Thompson, crap. Instead of going up into the person and maybe getting a foul, they were kind of avoiding contact and throwing up almost off balance runners. And it was not what I've ever seen. And Lori emphasized that when her and I were talking. She said, we didn't want any, Mike, we didn't want any part of the contact, which is shocking. Okay. Now, and then I said, you've got, they're sophomores, remember? And she says, they shouldn't be sophomores this point of the year. Now, they played so well as a group against Altamont. They obviously played a lot better against Breeze Central, who's a really good team.
Yes.
So it's a work in progress in T-Town. And I guarantee you, there's been a lot of discussion on tightening some of those things up.
And the other thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say the other thing that Lori, not to speak for her, but I'm sure the other thing she would think about that is that they're sophomores, but what is Effingham? Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Roster.
Oh, and that's what I told Jeff. I said, you got two seniors. And T-Town starts two seniors. Effingham starts no seniors, I don't think.
No.
Oh, yeah, because the Moser girl comes off the bench, and so does the
Hodge
girl. They both come off the bench.
Yep.
It's a That game is really going to be fun and good moving forward. I'm telling you, next year's game, I hope I'm able to help again because that will be a ball game now. It really will.
Yeah.
Talked to Jeff and I said, and I mentioned that to him about you kind of T-Town, and he said, we've never taken that approach with them. And the girls it's almost like the girls took it upon themselves to be the aggressor more than maybe Jeff had emphasized. And he just kind of smiled and he goes, well, it worked a heck of a lot better than other things we've tried to do in the past. But they did. I was so impressed. And it was like they were Effingham's defensive pressure. It wasn't like they were just stealing the ball, okay? But they were forcing T-Town into some very lackadaisical passes. And it was like, oh, we're playing against the kids at lunch, so no one's going to defend it and go get this little flip pass. It's good. And Effingham's going the other way. And fourth quarter, and it's still a very, I think T-Town's down maybe 8 or something, and they've got a real chance. And Lori they run a little pick and roll, and T-Town comes off the screen and doesn't even look. They're just flipping the pass where their player's supposed to be, and it may have been Austin, it may have been Mark. Somebody just was standing there waiting on it, and that just kind of summed up the whole game. And Effingham, I'll tell you, the Austin girl, they recognized her for 1,000 points. The Martin girl, played so hard. They all did, and I'm not trying to slight T-Town because there's a lot of talent there, Whitey. There really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it has to keep maturing. And that was a great lesson for them. And I guarantee you, Coach Thompson, Coach Cottrell are not letting them forget that they just weren't tough mentally against Effingham. That's probably the thing that I think emphasized that game. They weren't mentally tough. And they had it down. Oh my gosh, they had it down to 7, I think, and had the ball and then had a bad turnover.
Mm-hmm.
They had a chance to come back and get it to 5 and a bad turnover. And then Effingham just from there went on a run. Bria Beals just in the fourth quarter hit 2 or 3 threes late. And
I figured. I saw she had 14 points, and I figured she must have got on a little heater. And
she got probably at least 8 or 9 of those in the fourth quarter.
Yep. I mean, that's when you're in trouble against Effingham because Beals is probably option 5 as far as scoring for them,
she didn't start the ball game. Yeah. So it's hard to tell, but there was a lot of good things. I mean, Effingham had got it up so many points, and then again, just like we mentioned in the NTC game, an ill-advised 3 that I know Coach Schaefer wasn't happy with. Mm-hmm. And I think again, it's a case where, hey, we're up 10 or 11. It's my turn. And T-Town went down and scored and got it to 9, and then I think scored again and got it to 7, and then had the ball back. And then from that point on, it all went the other direction.
It's a good week for Effingham, though, because they beat Mattoon earlier in the week. So after Mattoon kind of handled them the first time they played,
Mattoon's got a girl that's injured right now. She played a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that
Jeff said she played a little bit, but and he was talking about the regional. I think it's Bethalto and them and Mattoon and maybe someone else. I'll all be on the same or in the same subsectional. And it's a shame, because I asked him, is Taylorville who he's looking for possibly in the sectional? He goes, he said, Wilson, I don't know if we can get there. It's going to be so much work because I think them Mattoon and maybe Bethalto are all going to be.
Yeah, Bethalto, Effingham, Mattoon are all in the same. They're all in the same subsectional.
Yeah, so if things go according to Hoyle, 2 of those 3 may get out. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, Effingham has beaten Mattoon the last 2 times they played him because they won that.
And I don't know if the Mattoon girl was hurt. That second game they played when the first time Effingham beat them, Jeff did say she was injured and kind of playing on one leg,
Yeah, it
and
was
I
a
can't remember her name.
closer game when they played just this week. It was a 6-point game, and then they had to play Muhammad yesterday, and Muhammad has been a really good team last couple of years.
But it's still at Muhammad.
Yeah, but they handled that one. So Effingham is up to
23-4, right?
23-4, yeah. And 3 of those losses are, 2 to Taylorville,
To Taylorville.
1 to Mattoon, and one other one. I'm blanking on who the other one was
It's all
again.
right.
But
yeah, and I just asked Laura, I said, is this one where you throw the tape away? And she just kind of smiled. But I'd like to see, Jeff may get a run out of his girls this year. That'd be great because I think they're really primed to have a deep run next year.
Highland is the other one, by the way.
Oh yeah, just a nobody.
Awfully
Another
good.
nobody on the schedule. And Lori's group, you better get them this year.
All right. Boy, we've been going and going. You know, uh, I'm just kind of trying to scan the schedule.
St. Anthony girls play this past week.
Yeah, they played. They beat South Central in a conference game by 30 points. Then they beat Pana by even more on Saturday. Paina's just having,
boys and girls are down.
yeah.
Robinson throttled Payne's boys.
But that does
it's
get
been it's been a rough week for me to follow a lot this week. I followed some things, but not a lot. Oh, and the best part about us out of time, Whitey, we don't have to talk about that college game yesterday because it was not a good game.
Yeah, Illinois beat Indiana. I didn't get to watch, but
it was not a good game. Either team, you and I could shot better free throws than both teams did.
That did get St. Anthony up to 20 wins, by the way. So you got St. Anthony, Altamont, and Brownstown, St. Elmo all up over 20 wins in the NTC girls. They may be the only ones who get there. Neoga's at 15, Windsor Stew Straws at 16. Oh, Dieterich at 17. They might do it, but CHBC's beaten Neoga twice in the last week. Windsor Stew Straws got a win over CHBC. I don't know. There's not a lot that I can speak intelligently on there because I've been in NTC boys mode all week. So
one final question I have for you, buddy.
Yeah.
How was the hospitality?
You know what? I spent plenty of time there and I was never disappointed. There was I definitely
had the fried chicken one night.
I did. Oh, you betcha. Yeah.
And then probably Casey's Pizza another night.
It was Casey's Pizza. There was some Joe's Pasta one night.
Ooh, that's right. Yeah. Now you got Joe's there.
Yeah, there was Subway yesterday.
The first time we had a hospitality room, Leon Godzimski was coaching, and they had not had one. And he had his wife make ham salad and had crackers, and he had ham salad sandwiches or ham salad, and that was in my understanding, the first hospitality room that had at the NTC. I may be mistaken, but
so Mackenzie White
she's become a connoisseur of hospitality.
Well, here's the deal. And she was a little annoyed with me, but I said, you're not working, so you're not eating, but you can come in with me and I might get you a little something,
Wow. We're getting ice cream, but you have to sit and watch.
She lived on tacos in a bag this week from the
I did see her one time on TV. She was pretty interested in that taco.
Well, let me tell you something. She was at 11 of the 14 games this week, and the only reason she wasn't at all of them was because Neoga's 8th graders were playing a regional game yesterday, and she had to go cheer at that. But we got her tickets for the championship, and she came back to watch that one.
And I told you Morgan Wilson thinks those two should do one of our shows.
Yeah, Mackenzie, my goal is to get her to where she could actually talk about basketball a little bit, and she showed some interest in keeping a book, and so I printed her off some scorebook pages, and actually that Windsor Stew Straws South Central game would have been the second game that they both played. She kept a clean book,
Really? She's probably better keeping a book, Whitey. She's probably better than me because I start watching the game And then I got to rely on Greg. And then when I say Greg said, "Hey, T-Town got the rebound," I'm like, no, Greg. Well, who got the rebound? So
Yeah.
it's hard unless you're
happens.
you or Matt who do it more. And I had a lot of false promise I threw out there Friday night. I had a couple of deliveries at work, and originally they were supposed to be one probably 5:30-ish, which sometimes those things drag out. And I thought, I called Greg and said, there is a 3 to 5% chance I could get there right at the tip or a little late. So
Well, I'm sure that
I've
didn't.
got Morgan Wilson. I got Morgan Wilson on standby, and she's praying that I was going to be late. She was disappointed when we got my second car delivered, and I was home by 6, 10 till 6. She was disappointed, and she was looking forward to that. And we'll see.
Well, her time will come. I'm sure. It's regionals
She can talk a little bit, and I do have to give her a shout out. She cantered at 7:30 Mass today and did it very good.
Let me see. Yeah, I mean that's it. I don't really have much else to.
Who are you picking today? I got the Ravens and the Niners.
I have no intelligent opinion about it.
Much to the chagrin of my daughter, who obviously, because of the Kels. Oh, we are now the second highest rated podcast in our household.
Oh yeah, whose is the
first? Kelsey Brothers have us, but we're second.
Yeah, well, that's okay. They're probably a little more entertaining too.
We don't cuss as much as they do.
Well, I could.
We could. Trust me, we could.
Yeah,
well, you could. I don't use words, but
I do. I'm not.
We're a team, Whitey. We're a team. That's why I would take one with you.
I get it all out of my system elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and T-Town St. Anthony this week, big game, but that'll be, I'm sure, a big focal point of the conversation next week. But
there will be a big crowd in the barn Friday night.
I did not, and I failed to mention, Matt mentioned in passing that the Atwood kid from St. Elmo Brownstown went over 1,000 during the tournament, but so did Brock Fearday from St. Anthony. Yeah. In fact, it was the same day, right? Like it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, back-to-back games. It was the first round games.
Yeah. Nice accomplishment. It comes about a little bit more often now than it does, but it doesn't take anything away from the fact that
most kids are playing more younger. It's not because there's more offense, but I think you're seeing more kids playing meaningful freshman or sophomore minutes, and they get 200 points as a freshman. That really gives you you get 200 points as a freshman, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, listen, the days of having to pay your dues at the freshman sophomore level just aren't there anymore because too many
sheer numbers.
We've had this conversation 100 times, but kids just don't play anymore if they think they're not going to be stars.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
And it's frustrating, but it is what it is. Yep. It's what leads you to having, I see, without naming any names, I see very successful varsity basketball programs, particularly girls teams, that still only have like 9 or 12 kids total in them. Like they win a ton of varsity games, but you can't believe that there's not more people than that are interested in being a part of that.
Yep.
But they're like, well, that's club volleyball season.
You're exactly right.
And do it all. I'll say it now. I've said it 100 times and I'll say it 100 more. Do it all. You'll never get another chance to do those things.
I got a shout out at the Workman Complex Thursday morning. I was lifting. Stacy Vonderheid's uncle was in there. He said, I want to tell you something. You guys asked her the question on there that this was probably the hardest thing she's had to do this year. And he goes, you were right. He goes, as a family, we loved it. She doesn't like to be the spotlight or talking like that. And we all thought she did a pretty good job. And I said, oh, yeah, Whitey and I were very impressed. She handled herself well and did a good job, was very conversational.
Yep.
And
Yep.
And I was talking to, well, I was talking to Greg Custer because he's senior at the Workman Complex too. When no one's around, working, not shooting and scratching, working. He says,
Yep.
I've been there and seen her, do almost a 2-hour workout. And she works.
Love to hear about kids like that,
Yep.
and listen,
Heck yes.
it wasn't me. I wish it had been, but I have a lot of respect for it. And
We're going to get it probably, we're going to try to get at least one more kid on before basketball season's over as a guest. So I like it when we do it that way.
Yeah, and I think people do enjoy it too. But I'll tell you what, they're probably not going to enjoy it if we keep talking because we're
Nope.
like it.
We better wrap it up.
But listen, there was a lot to talk about, and I could talk about that NTC tournament for another 2 hours if somebody will let me. Had a hell of a time. It was fun.
Not
So
me.
nobody
It is a good
does it
tournament.
better. Nobody does it better. It's a great conference. It really is.
Yeah.
I love it. The people involved, the coaches, the people who show up to the games and are invested in it. It's like nothing else.
I was disappointed I didn't get a chance to talk to friend of the show, Josh Zink, last night. I didn't see him, but I was talking to other people and didn't really get a chance to look for him.
Josh is a great guy, and
I enjoy him. He's heck yes.
And he's a good coach too. I mean, listen, and I'm not just saying it because I like it.
Here's a question. Close your eyes, listen to their voice. Have you ever seen Josh Zink and Ted Lasso in the same room? I'm just saying.
I've never watched Ted Lasso, so I don't.
It's Josh Zink coaching soccer in England.
Well,
it's hilarious.
I think that's a good point to end it on.
It is hilarious. And I may be the only person in the world who thinks that. I haven't had a chance to tell him that. So he may watch this show and he'll say, God, Wilson.
I'll have to let him know to check it out.
Yeah.
Hey. All right. Let's call it a week because I've got everybody converging on me. So take it easy, Mike.
See you, bud.